Okay, so welcome everybody. This is John and Flip Anderson of,
I'm Flip.
of Albany, Oregon, and they're here to tell Flip's story of recovery from pain, from chronic pain. So thank you so much for being here and bringing your story. Both of you have done so many amazing things in your lives, and recovering from a pain condition created by your unconscious mind or your nervous system is something that hundreds of millions of people are up against, are moving through, are healing from. So stories like this really help folks feel inspired and feel like they can do it. So I'd love you to just introduce yourselves and tell me the story. Tell us all the story.
The story began with the Pacific Crest Trail. We were trying. I was trying to go with John from Mexico to Canada, and I got past the Sierras, and I started getting this pain in my groin. And I went to emergency care. I went to urgent care, and I had a masseuse, and I had tried all these things to control the pain, but the only thing that seemed to be working was ibuprofen, and I didn't want to just be taking a lot of um, medicines along the way.
And you had to use a topical as well.
Yeah.
You would rub on and you read you were doing exercises.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. I was during our break from the hike. I mean, like we were like lunchtime, I would, do these different exercises and things like that. And so finally, I had to get off the trail due to pain. And I went to I went to my doctor, and I got to a physical therapist. And after twice a week for a number of weeks, the therapist and I realized that it wasn't doing me any good. And that's when I finally listened to Wolf, because Wolf was our friend, and he could see that I was in pain, and he had already experienced something like that, and he directed me to go to this
Send us a link to a website.
on Wikipedia. And as I was listening to that on the way home from a long trip to anyway, I finally started watching it, and I realized, okay, this makes a lot of sense to me. And so I began then walking around every evening our field, because we live out in the country, and so it's like 3/4 of a mile. And I walk with our little dog, and what I would do is I would tell myself that I'm safe, tell my body that we don't have anything to worry about. I don't need to be in pain. And then I would just thank God and pray and just walk around the field. And first, I had been 6 months in pain before I started this, going around the field. And in a month and a half, the pain was gone.
Wow.
Yay! Thanks, Wolf.
Yeah. Wow. So let me just back up a second for folks who might not know what the Pacific Crest Trail is and where you were on that journey, like where you were in terms of the miles you'd put in, the experiences you've had. Maybe there were some very real dangers on the trail of slipping in the ice or anything that would have caused your nervous system to become overly protective, overly sensitive.
Yes, that
So can you
nails
give
it.
give us a
Well,
little?
this going through the Sierras, for 31 straight trail days, we walked in snow. We would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and in the Sierra Nevadas and go up to get to these passes before the snow would get soft, and we would post hole or sink into the deep snow. And then when we'd get to the top of the passes to these north slopes, it'd be this steep drop off with miles of snow.
There was more snow after the pass than there was before.
And Flip would get terrified. If it was scary, she would fall down. And
John could walk like a goat. And he would just move along, and me, I'm careful. I don't want to do stupid, so I'm going slow. And after a month of this, it's when the pain began.
Well, even before that, in the midst of that, it
Mhm.
began.
That's right.
And so she
How
looked
many,
back, she realized,
Wait, we'll ask.
I was just gonna ask, how many miles into this journey were you, or how long had you been on the trail, and how many miles before you start to have some sensations?
Mhm.
that that's about mile 800 where we started doing the passes. And she got off for the first time at mile 1600 and then got on and off the trail twice and then got off for good at the Columbia River. So she ended up hiking 1,840 miles of the 2,650-mile trail.
And so more of it was in pain than not, as you can tell, 800 versus 1,800.
Right.
Mhm.
And so how did you, in the beginning, how did you think about the pain? Did you think, oh, this is just a little blip, it's going to disappear? Or were you
Right.
afraid of it? Like, did you give it fear in your mind?
Oh yeah, definitely. I gave it fear in my mind, and because it was persistent, so it was in my groin on one side. So every other step I took was pain, and
Okay.
there was a lot of steps, but I wanted to keep going really bad. So like I said, I was using a lot of ibuprofen, but it's in hindsight now that I can look back and ask myself, where and why did this pain start? If it was neural pathway, like I found out. And it was what John described. It was just coming down the mountain, and I would tell myself, don't cry, don't cry. So
Wow.
there was fear and pain together about doing these long slopes. And it wouldn't go away. That was the thing. It just,
And that's why she went to the emergency, where she went to the emergency room was just in little towns that didn't have urgent care. And they'd say, well, no, you're not, there's nothing physically wrong with you. You're
yes,
not injuring yourself
yeah.
for the rest of your
Wow.
life.
And
And
that,
her trail name is Wonder. You get these
Yeah.
trail names on the Pacific Crest Trail for
and it
awe and
wasn't like
wonder.
Wonder Woman. It was like awe and wonder.
Yeah,
Okay.
she just loved
Well,
I was
I think,
not Wonder Woman.
So even when she went off, she didn't want to go off because she would be smiling and loving it and then crying.
Because I'm tired and pain and in pain. Yeah.
right. And one of the concepts in this recovery journey is about emotions and
Yeah.
expressing your emotions in a healthy way. So for me, for example, like as a kid, I learned don't cry. Like my late father never cried. I never saw him cry once. So it helped me on my journey to stop saying like don't cry. Instead, say cry. Like let the tears come, let the emotions come up, so that my nervous system and my mind could see them as safe. So when you're telling me that you're saying don't cry, it feels like maybe you were suppressing emotions, and then that maybe could have fueled the pain more because you're suppressing the
Mhm.
emotions. So your nervous system is like, well, if she's not allowing me to cry, then I'm going to cry through a sensation in your body.
Whoa. I never realized that. I didn't, Wolf. But you challenged me along the trail. So early on in my pain, you were trying to help me. You were calling up and trying to convince me it was not what I thought it was. And
Right.
um oh sorry.
It's
Um
okay. I remember.
yeah. So for you told me about because you knew that maybe I told you, but I had overcome sciatica by
Right.
keeping track of all the thoughts passing through my mind, like a little ticker tape. It was these constant conversation thoughts. I had learned to do that in another program, like how to really address um, well, what your brain is telling your body. And I knew how to do that. So when I saw the videos that you led me to, I hadn't been able to, the thing that I tried for sciatica wasn't working for this pain. So I didn't even connect it, but it wasn't until months later, after the pain was gone, we were watching another video about another hiker. And I don't even need to tell you that story about, what it was, but it gave me an insight into why the pain began. And so now I can pinpoint it as the Sierras, as all that snow, all that fear, all that pain. Yeah.
Well, actually, an interesting thing that happened. So now she's a stronger hiker than she ever was before.
I don't know
She's
why.
72 years old now, and we
That makes
still are
sense.
doing training hikes because she wants to finish hiking the PCT. So
Yes.
she has 175 miles left. We would have finished it last year, but fire stopped us.
Or the first year.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, we were just last week, we were snowshoeing for 4 miles uphill, and she's the one that was breaking trail. I never told her that it was harder for her than
No,
for
it
me
didn't tell me
following
that
her.
at all.
Because I couldn't keep up with her otherwise, so I just let her go.
He told me it's prettier if you can break trail because you see all this beautiful untouched snow.
So, and she was, I mean, she was fine doing it, but that first summer that we started hiking again, the first day that we were on the Pacific Crest Trail to try and do the entire state of Washington, she said, John, I feel that pain again. And we still, that was early in the morning and we still had the whole day. And I was like, well, let's see what happens. And she
And
never
so-
mentioned it again.
so
So I
that's
asked her
good.
that night.
Yeah, so I'm asking myself that question, why am I in pain now? And I realized that the night before we had been watching some Pacific Crest Trail videos, and there are the guys called the Codgers because they're about our age. And they were talking about how dangerous one stream crossing was.
Well, they were showing a video of going through the street.
Okay.
One guy almost getting washed away and then climbing Mather Pass that it was straight up and they had to use ice axe and crampons and hope they didn't slip because it was a 1,000-foot drop off if they did.
So, and that's what we have been doing. And so I realized, oh, I was just remembering that story and my mind replied with this pain. And of course it went away right away. And if I had the Pacific Crest Trail to do again, then I would have been able to tell myself, and as a Christian, I would just say, Lord, thank you that you're going before me, you're caring for me, you're giving me wisdom, you're giving me the ability to do this, and I thank you. And I know that kind of self-talk is what heals us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A deep faith,
Mhm.
a deep faith knowing that in spite of all those dangers, that you're protected.
Yeah.
So that deeper faith can allow your nervous system to relax
Oh, it does.
and say, okay, well, I'm taken care of, like on a different level. I don't need to be hyper reactive to this situation
Yeah.
because I know God's got me. Like I'm on this journey. Whatever's meant to happen will. The pain can help me become a stronger hiker. It sounds like that you
I
found
don't say that.
Yeah. So yeah, the journey, it sounds like you feel stronger than you were before the pain. Or
It surprises me. We were,
right.
and this one I discovered it when we were later hiking in the in his desert mountains, and it was like I was just walking really fast, and I was doing these really hard things, and there was no change in me. I was just enjoying it and walking. And I was walking really fast. I didn't even know it. I was just happy walking.
When we started out the trail, I had worked as a ranger in the past. In fact, that's how we met. She was a backpacker. And so we enjoy hiking together. But because we'd done lots of training hikes to prepare for the Pacific Crest Trail, I knew she walked slower than I did. So I brought flippers and a saw with me, and I would be doing trail work along the trail, and then would either she'd be ahead of me and she'd catch, and I'd catch up with her, or vice versa, she'd catch up with me. But I don't do trail work anymore because now I can't catch up with her.
That's funny.
Roles are reversed now.
Uh,
So one of the things that really clued me in to what was happening for you was just that it's the physical therapist seemed to be saying that you had some kind of a weakness or imbalance. And I couldn't see how you could have that if you'd hiked 800 miles or however many at that point, that your body would be stronger than that physical therapist's body, most likely. And your muscles would have been really strengthened beyond the norm by that journey of hiking. So
mhm,
that's clued me in as to say this isn't an overuse or this isn't a muscle imbalance situation, which they said to me as well. And it
mhm.
didn't make sense after a while for me either, because it felt like, well, my body's pretty strong. Like I was strong before I got into this thing. And then I felt like by listening to what they said, I actually got weaker because I became afraid of doing certain exercises or certain movements. But there's been a real trend and pattern among people who I've known on the recovery journey, people with really long journeys, like years and years, and they've all gotten really strong. So I had one sister that was in a group with me, and we call each other brother and sister. And she's now has her own Instagram channel where it's Mind Body Strong, and she's working out all the time. And she now has Zoom dance groups, and her body is transformed. She's probably stronger than she's ever been. I personally feel the same way. Like I've done things after the worst parts of my journey. I moved more and more into doing things that were really scary. And I knew I needed to confront that fear and do things like jump into the ocean on a 30-degree day or or lift weights like I do now. I use 40-pound dumbbells and do squats. And before that, I had sensations even when I was doing squats with no dumbbells. That's kind of how it began. So I knew I needed to teach my brain, I can do this. Like I can really do this. So it's not unusual for this transformation to happen, for you to become stronger. And
Hmm.
it's really it's a cool thing. And not only that, but you probably have a deeper faith
Yeah,
in your ability to move
mm,
through stuff.
yeah, I do.
Do you feel like your confidence levels by coming through this have increased a lot as well?
I didn't ever connect it like that.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, she actually, one of the videos she referred to, I think this is what she was referring to, was there was a guy that passed us actually just like
before I got off the trail.
shortly, just a few minutes before she got off the trail. And this guy was hiking all three of the major trails, the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and then finished up with the Continental Divide Trail, all in one calendar year. The guy was incredible. And so he did some videos, and it was watching his videos that Flip had an insight into how much she enjoys this hiking. Yeah.
I remember at the time it went click, when I saw his
Good.
video afterwards, because he was
Right.
doing something, he was overcoming something, but it wasn't really a clear line. It was just at that point it went, aha. That's when I got it in the Sierras with the snow. It took me a while after the event, after the healing, before I connected it.
Yeah, usually it takes some time to look back and say,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. You look
Mhm.
back and you say, oh, of course that was happening because in my case, COVID was there, no more music work, no more artwork, just a lot of pressures and fears. And the fears were really huge. There was a lot of other stuff happening, deaths, and a DJ who was a great advocate of the Winterlings music. He passed away with COVID early on. And that was like a shock to me. So there were like all these shocks. And looking back on it, of course, my nervous system was freaked out. I didn't know what to do. And it just built and built. And I also ignored sensations for a long time and just pretended they weren't there, or just pushed them away, or iced them, or whatever, or ibuprofen. And none of that really was helpful. It just kind of gave a little bit of relief, but it wasn't a
Mhm.
long-term healing. And the long-term healing, as you have seen, requires some mental work, some
Yeah.
faith work, some prayer, some meditation. What would you say were the most effective things that you did? Was it getting back on the trail? Was it praying while you were on the trail? Was it just the knowledge of what was going on? Or
Knowledge of what was going on, because I really believed, I just bought into what you were trying to teach us. I bought into that. So I think it was mental. Just, I'm committed to this because I know it's going to end if I do this, that kind of thing.
right? So you had the conviction and
Watching
the
her,
faith.
that's exactly,
I had the conviction of faith.
yeah.
I had enough experience to believe what you were trying to teach me was true.
Right. And that's something that it can take. I've seen it take with clients quite a long time. It can take years even to accept that there's not a physical cause.
Mhm.
And sometimes it takes some deep digging from childhood and going back and saying, oh, well, my nervous system got really hypersensitive when I was a kid because things were chaotic and divorces or abuse or whatever was happening. And so little nervous systems can get wired up.
Mhm.
When you look back on your childhood, do you see anything that might have made your nervous system more overprotective or over responsive? Like for me, early divorce of my parents and bullying and just that kind of stuff, not knowing where I was going to be living. And so
Mhm.
do you see any patterns there?
I personally don't. I'm one of those lucky people that had a really loving home, a
Sweet.
lucky person. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was because I had gone to this place called Pleasant Valley in Georgia, and they
Okay.
taught the spiritual roots of disease. And that was my um, understanding then from that point on, that what I think matters to my body. It was the mind-body connection. And so I did my sciatica, I would just be walking from the garage into the house and boom, my back would freeze up with sciatica. I'd be down and out for 2 weeks.
Few
But
weeks. Okay.
but because of this Pleasant Valley place, I understood the mind-body connection and I could control it. When I started to feel my back tightening up, I stop and ask, okay, what's stressing me right now? What am I afraid
Interesting.
of right now? And then I would just go through that process of, well, it was a Christian outlook. So I would just confess my sin, participating with the spirit of fear, stress, and anxiety. And
Okay.
just say, I repent of that and I ask forgiveness. And in the name of Jesus, I just say that kind of thing has to leave me right now. And that was the paradigm that I had for the sciatica.
And
And
you would look at what it was that was stressing you and address that.
And repent of it because like for instance, one time I got off the lawnmower at our nursery and it just froze up and and it was because we were in the process of selling the business and I had all these irons in the fire. And I mean, I look back and it makes all the sense in the world. So I keep looking. If the back starts to tighten, I just keep looking until I figure it out. What am I stressing about? Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's usually pretty obvious.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They say there was a doctor named Sarno, and he said that most of these sensations, back pain, migraines, fibromyalgia, all this kind of stuff is from a psychological source of stress and repressed rage and repressed emotions. So they'll often say, think psychologically instead of think about your body having a pain. Think what's causing me stress right now. How can I let my nervous system know that I'm okay, that I can deal with this stress, that I've seen it before, that it's not a big deal. And so that makes a lot of sense and sounds really helpful that you learned that a long time before
Mhm.
the hiking pain, because
Exactly,
you already had skills in
I
this
did.
realm. And
And you recognized it in me. I remember
yeah,
one time you said, you don't have to worry about sciatica anymore. You've gotten rid of it yourself. And that's, you had confidence that I could just do that.
absolutely. I didn't know you would be moving that quickly. It's really amazing that you moved from that intense pain lasting a long time to the resolution and back on the trail, back hiking, back doing all those things, because I feel really happy that you were open to listening to me, because I didn't have anybody in my life who could tell me that. So I had to go through all the doctors and they did the injections, and my leg stopped working after one of them, my father had just died, and none of the doctors realized you shouldn't be doing that stuff when somebody's father just died. I mean, it's really, my system was ramped up, and here she goes with the needle into my leg, into my hip. And so I wanted to help keep you from going down all those paths. There's like a false, I don't know if it's false or it's just the medical system, the way it's set up. They'll keep doing all this physical stuff to you. And in many cases, it gets worse and worse. And I was fortunate enough to have some physicians that said, hey, I know you're on the right path here. You've just been on this a long time. You've gone so deep into it. You've had all these traumas from the medical system as well as life. So keep going with what you're doing. And I'll give you meds if you need them, but ultimately the meds aren't going to help that much. I mean, they were honest with me and said
Mhm.
the meds they'll help a little, and then you're going to get to where you need more of that, and you're going to need more of it, and then your whole system will be geared towards the med and whatever. So I had to get off of all the meds. The ibuprofen was one that was a little bit of relief, and then I ended up in the ER with gastritis. So that was part of that whole journey too. And you remember when I had arrhythmia, and that was also one of these that happened before the pain. The arrhythmia was stress over music shows and just financial stuff and just like trying to like make it all work as a musician. And that was kicking for a long time. And you helped me with that, and I was open to that. And your loving help and your prayers really moved me in the right direction. And I felt like that was super helpful, saying, okay, uh, I know that this is going to fade, and you're helping me with that, with your prayers and faith healing. Help me to move a little closer to saying, oh, this is part of the process. Okay, Flip's going to make me feel a little less afraid of this, which you did. And then I could continue lessening the fear, because the fear is the fuel of it. It just
Yeah.
keeps it going. So once
Mhm.
you realize that, then it's like, what techniques am I going to use to drop the fear? And people have hundreds of different, maybe not hundreds, but there's at least 20 or 30 techniques, from meditation, journaling, prayer, exercise, exposure to really intense stuff. So, so yeah, so on your journey, after you reached a point where the pain was fading or faded, did you have a big leap back into hiking, or did you ease back in? Like, people will want to know, did you like just do like a flooding, like a big hike, or did you do a little bit at a time, like a graded exposure kind of path?
Well, we're in Oregon where it rains a lot, and so it wasn't an option to go hiking. So it was from December to January 15 that I was doing this. And so when it came time to start training a couple months later for going down to the desert and hiking in the desert mountains. So no, I didn't just, I mean, once a week we started training. And that
So
just
more,
meant going up a mountain with good elevation gain and doing it a little heavier pack, a little farther, just slow, incrementally increasing.
She would
yeah,
walk around the field nightly with the dog, but the training where we really pushed our bodies, the shortest of those training hikes is 8 miles, and we'd bump it up to 16 by the time we were ready to go. Like she said, adding more miles, more weight each week, and until right before it was time to go.
Mhm.
so the graded exposure kind of
Yeah.
sounds
Mhm.
like graded exposure. And then you built your strength and built your strength.
But
So,
yeah, she was strong enough. She could have done it immediately. After she did that month and a half, it
It
was
was
gone.
over.
It was gone.
It ain't coming
yeah,
back.
Yeah.
I love that
And
attitude.
that the story gets told along the trail quite often as we're encountering people and they see these old people hiking and then we say, well, there's
Oh,
a
when I said
story.
I had to get off the trail for pain, and people that are having pain there, they lean in at that point. What kind of pain? How'd you get rid
Yeah,
of it? Yeah, so
yeah.
it's been a
And
lot of fun to share that with people.
it's a whole revolution in pain science that's happening. And it's really paradoxical and counterintuitive for a lot of people to
Mhm,
realize that the way out of the pain is to go through it
mhm,
with confidence and know that you're actually okay, your body's fine, you're structurally sound, you're strong, and that you can keep going. You can do anything. You can do everything that you want to do, and it takes an extremely courageous mindset to be able to jump in both feet into it and go back to it. It took me a while. I was doing little walks and little swims, and then I met a polar bear, this guy at the pool, and he was like, Kent, I think his name was Kent. And I said, Kent, what are you doing? He would jump in the water and he would swim for a solid hour and he wouldn't stop. He wouldn't drink any water and he'd be there every time. And he had his earphones and would be listening to music. And he said, try it, Wolf. He said, try it. And I didn't tell him too much about my journey or anything. And after that, I did it. I got huge sensations after that. And I just said, I'm good. I'm going to keep doing it. I'll do it 10 times. And after 10 times, I'll worry about it and look at it. And that was really helpful because I just jumped in and then realized there were some paradoxes there where if I did more, I felt better. I mean, that was really, did you ever have moments like that where you did more and you felt better than if you did less?
I can't say that, but one of
Oh,
the masseuse that that I went. Okay, we met some cousins on the trail who got us allowed me to get connected to a masseuse, and she loaned me a book to read, and it was all about your posture and
okay.
about how if you have pain, the solution to pain is to keep walking, where medicine tells us to stop and rest, but you keep walking. So I had also that as another um, idea in my head about what heals people.
But she didn't know about the fear yet. And yeah,
Well, right. I hadn't talked with, I hadn't bought into what you were saying. So I didn't, what your experience was way worse than mine. Mine was just a little growing pain. So
Right,
I just,
right,
yeah.
and that, so Flip is telling her story and you look like this healthy specimen of a guy, which you are, but
right,
the people that don't know you, they don't know how long you suffered and how
Yeah.
hopeless.
right,
I mean, there were times when we
right,
talked with you and you were like,
right,
it's it's an effort to even keep going. I'm
right.
so
Yeah,
close to saying I can't take this anymore.
yeah.
And
It,
so it's miraculous to see you
Yeah.
the way you are now. It's incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I went down to the bottom and I learned from the bottom. I bounced off the bottom, as I say. Like when you hit the bottom, you either go down forever or you spring up. And as you know from my journey, there were a lot of cases where I didn't feel like I had any other choice but to summon that strength and really rise up in a more dramatic way than I thought I could. And thankfully, along the way, there were different angels who showed up for me.
Yeah.
And some of them, I still feel like I haven't even met some of them in person, but they showed up on the phone or on Zoom and said, "Hey, I've had this long journey for 6 to 8 years and I've gotten better and here's what I've done." And so all these little secrets start popping in and you realize you can do it. You can do this. But this is one of the reasons why I was so insistent with you, because I love you and you both have been so such a beautiful part of my life, that I didn't want you to go down into the depths, because that's the way medicalization can happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you see enough doctors and they tell you they can't help you, and then you start getting procedures. I had a neighbor in Washington who was going in for back surgeries. And I said, Andy, look into this stuff, because I'm not going to force you, but you're going in for these surgeries. And you come out of the surgery and you'd be like, that doctor ripped me off. I'm no better. I'm worse. Like I can't even do this and that. Can't take care of my chickens or whatever. So when I saw that process of medicalization, I said, oh no, don't go into the shots and the implants and all this type of stuff, because you could still recover when you do that stuff, but it sidetracks. It puts you on a fear track. And I remember having the first steroid shot and they tell you it's going to work. And I was waiting all these days, I don't know, 12 days or whatever, and nothing. And it just got worse even. And it was so depressing when what they said was going to work didn't work at all. That's when I just dropped everything. Did you drop everything as well? Did you drop all the physical treatments? Did you drop the massage, physical therapy, all that? Or did you keep some of that as you
Drop.
recovered? Just dropped it all. Okay.
Yeah, so I was walking in pain and I wasn't even taking ibuprofen because I thought, I don't want to just keep doing that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I stopped as well. And I've only taken it a few times since, in years and years, only when I've had some infection or something, a flu, where it's been
Right.
really intense and I
Me
couldn't
too.
sleep or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, so
Yeah, and she even stopped walking around the field with our dog because it was too painful for her. And so then,
Yeah,
yeah, so she just,
but you have to face it.
but,
That
Yeah.
then when she,
intuitive.
but then she started up again with the conviction that, no, I'm gonna get better.
Yeah, I totally bought in.
Yeah,
yeah,
I did.
the dog was
the
very
bot,
happy.
Yeah.
He loved those walks.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The buy-in is huge. I mean, the belief, the faith, and
Mhm.
a lot of times people will criticize faith and not see it for what it is. But when you have that faith, then you have an unshakable faith,
Yeah.
then your mind aligns and your
Yes.
whole system goes in that direction. And then there's
Yeah.
no way for you to go back
Yeah.
to that place where you were in doubt and in fear. And so that's, yeah. And you already had that training from
Yes,
before.
exactly.
So you knew, okay, there could be stress here, pressure here.
Sure.
Now, Flip, in your life now, do you have practices? For example, a lot of people, some of my clients will meditate a couple times a day, or they'll have a practice of yoga, or they'll have a journaling or something like that. And for
Mhm.
me, I will meditate. I still meditate and I work out really vigorously. And that
Mhm.
those things, sometimes I'll still swim. go to the pool and I swim for an hour and I just all out learning butterfly now. That's really
Yeah.
intense. It's hard to breathe. You flying like a butterfly. Anyway, so are there any practices that you still have in your life? I mean, do you stop during the day and pray? Are you praying throughout the day? Do you do any other practices where maybe you and John do something, have a talk? I don't know. Like, are there things that are helping you to, I don't want to say maintain because you're past it, but are there ways in which your journey, like your pain journey, made your life maybe more present or uh, more spiritual, more, do you have a gratitude practice? There's just so many things that people will do and keep doing after the pain goes away. And they
Mhm.
keep doing it because they like it feels
Yeah,
good to
right.
them. So do you have anything like that
Sure.
okay,
So
tell us about
I've got this neat book called The Hour That Changes the World. And
it?
it
Okay.
divides the hour up into 5-minute segments. And one of the first moments is being grateful. So I have on my Spotify a collection of songs that I dance to and I'm grateful with. Okay,
Beautiful.
so that's one.
And
Another one,
tell me a little more. Tell me a little more. Do you do
oh,
this every
that's,
day?
well, I don't do it every day now.
Okay.
But it's one of the many things. I mean, I like praying. Like yesterday, I spent 2 hours with just being with God and stuff. So
Beautiful.
it's just a regular part of my life and I do different things over time.
She's been quite distracted. We've had a couple guys living with us.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so
And the house is really cold where we don't heat it. You know, our big drafty old farmhouse. So they're in the warm part. And at night, I don't have a place to sit that's private, that's warm.
so
So
that
Okay.
that's been a real problem. I mean, a limitation for me. But
Okay.
nevertheless, I'm a person that prays throughout the day, of course. But when I have a warm space, I thought, well, I've journaled for years and I've got lots of notebooks and so I write these paragraphs to God. I tell him what's going on
Beautiful.
and then I listen. And he tells me
Beautiful.
how much he loves me. He gives me wisdom. He gives me things I need to know. He changes my attitude. He'll tell me something like, today, don't do anything, just relax and enjoy this day. Other days,
Beautiful.
be really specific, like, I want you to welcome this homeless person into your home. And so,
Beautiful.
I mean, it's so rich that that is like a powerhouse in me.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So yes, I pray out throughout the day. I like, and I have a grateful Spotify list. I've got a worship Spotify list. I have one that I pray for people with. I call it my deliverance one. So I have all this music and I put it in my ears and sometimes I dance and sometimes I just work,
Yeah.
that's the joy of my life. In fact,
Yeah. Beautiful.
my Bible verse for my life, you have made known to me the paths of life, and you will fill me with joy in your presence. Isn't
Amen.
that the best?
Beautiful. Say that again.
You have made known to me the pathway of life, and you will fill me with joy in your presence. So for me, prayer is presence of God.
It is.
It is.
It is. Yeah. And that's your superpower.
That's my superpower.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah. And so,
And so when I
yeah,
started really hiking fast, it was because I was praying the whole time. So like the first hour, no, the, the first 2 hours of hiking, straight on. If John starts talking to me, I just say, John, I'd really like to be praying right
back
now.
off, John, I need my space.
I feel like you're conveying me. I need my space.
oh, fun.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So to me, faith is everything.
Yeah,
It just permeates everything in my life. And I get
absolutely.
older and I get happier.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Leonard Cohen, the singer,
Mhm.
songwriter, and poet and mystic, he struggled his whole life with depression and with anxiety, took all these medications, and then he was doing a lot of drugs and he I finally went to the doctor, and the doctor said, You're going to die soon, Leonard. You're just on the road to death if you don't do something." So he went up to the monastery on Mount Baldy, I think, down in California, and he stayed there for 5 years, just meditating, praying. He had his own mystical way. He was Jewish, he was Buddhist, he was all just connected. So he went through all that. And yeah, it transformed his mind. And he used to also say that when he reached a certain age, all the brain cells that were making him feel depressed died off. And he just got more and more joyful.
And
So
that's
yeah,
not true for everybody. You see a lot of old people that are not that way, so,
no,
yeah.
no, it's you're coming closer to God, and you've been on such an amazing adventure of a life and a journey, and all of that is just with you. Like you've developed this internal reservoir of light and connection, and that's so powerful. And a lot of people listening to this, I hope they will see that that has not just been because of the pain, but this has been your life's journey. And all of that that you've done, all of that gratitude and prayer and connection, all of that has made it so when you had this pain, you are able to use all of that internal reservoir
Yes,
to move faster than a lot of people, because a
yes.
lot of people haven't had that. They haven't had that ability to really connect deeply. And
Mhm,
so so that's really a superpower.
mhm.
And I'm glad we talked about that, because it really is something that people will sometimes want to just make this into a formula, and they'll say, Wolf, what can I do? ABC. And I said, this isn't just about getting rid of the pain. This is about,
Yeah,
it's a spiritual journey. It's a transformation. You're
Mhm.
going to be a different person on the other
Yeah.
side of this.
yeah.
And that transformation is what will transform the pain. And so once your mind shifts away from the fear, and you don't even care if the pain's there, you have a deep faith, you know
Mhm,
you're going to get there,
mhm.
that's when it really shifts. A lot of people want it to shift. They want the pain to shift first, but really the mind has to shift first. The pain, you can't force the pain to shift. You can just have a deep knowing that it's gonna, and then there's nothing that will stop that process from unfolding. And so it's a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, Flip often refers to it as rewiring her brain, and that's a process that doesn't happen in a moment.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's a new Guardian article that just came out with a couple of authors writing about this very stuff. And one of the principles that they said was there's no one and done. Like it's not usually a instant like thing that happens. Like you have a surgery. Apparently, people say you can have a surgery and then something's better. I haven't seen that happen much. And in fact, the top spine surgeon from Seattle stopped doing spine surgeries, and now he's a pain coach. He has his own program, Dr. Hanscom,
Right.
because he realized that his patients were getting worse
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to your journey. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but do you have any advice for anybody who's in the thick of it and wants to move forward?
I'm going to tell the story of coming to faith.
Okay, beautiful.
So way back late 1970s, um, I had married a workaholic husband and I didn't know it. And I was getting really frustrated, disappointed with being married. And I was seriously thinking in my mind about leaving him and the kids and just disappearing. And John's mom had given me this book for Christmas, which I looked at and thought, whatever, and I put it on the bookshelf. But one day when I was baby number two, had grabbed a book and sat down on the couch and got all locked in nursing the baby. And I picked up the book and thought, oh, that's not the book I wanted. But it was the book called God Calling. And it was from the 1940s. It was written, these two women would get together every evening and pray together and then write down what they thought God was telling them. And so I started reading it, and it was amazing. It was like what Jesus would say if he was alive today. And I read it, and I was for 2 days, God's love filled the living room in our little trailer house.
Beautiful.
So when Sunday came, I said, John, I've got to go to church. I've got to go with people who believe this. And he said he didn't want to go. So he stayed home with the baby, and I took our 3-year-old, and I drove down the road till I came to the first church, and I pulled in, and I just stayed there. I mean, but this is the story, how your mind. So reading this book was transforming me. And I used to be, when I'd hang up the clothes on the clothesline, this bugs me, this bugs me, this bugs me. But now it was, Lord, bless this person. Lord, bless
Wow.
this person. And it says in the Bible that we get transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that's what was happening in me. And it was just, God began teaching me. And it helped me with those 2 women could hear God speak to them. And I knew that God was a relational God, not just a God of rules. He wants to love us. Well, he does love us, but he wants us to love him back. And so it's this beautiful surrounding. It's just filling your mind and heart with love from God that's inexhaustible. And so after a while, John saw the difference in me, and he started coming to church. And it was just another couple of years, and we all went off to Haiti, and all the adventures really began.
Yes, they did. Many, many adventures. Yes. So if anybody wants to know more about those adventures, what should they read?
Exactly. Well,
The Gospel of Trees.
I apricot Irving.
Yes.
Serving.
So,
Yeah.
so their daughter wrote an amazing memoir, The Gospel of Trees. So if you'd like to learn more about the family, the faith, the adventure, then pick up a copy.
Yeah.
And
Simon and
thank you.
Schuster book. Yeah.
What's that?
It's a Simon and Schuster book. So.
Published.
Simon and Schuster. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, both of you, for being here and sharing your story with everybody. I'm going to get it up on YouTube in a little while. I don't know when, but I'll get it up sooner than later. And if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you? On Instagram or email or
I think
how?
Instagram, because John he does the Instagram.
Okay. So if
So
somebody
that's
has
one.
questions or
Yeah, that's
comments,
you'll probably post that. It's Paat and Wonder. Yeah.
spell it out for everybody. At PAAT and Wonder.
Yeah, it's PA apostrophe. Well, actually, on Instagram, there's no apostrophe. So PAAT and Wonder. So that was our trail names. Paat is a Kuya Indian word for bighorn sheep. So Paat and Wonder, and then they can message me on that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. And thanks for all the people who are going to be helped by your story. I
Thanks
love
for
you
your
and I
friendship and your peace.
appreciate you.
Your big piece in my healing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I feel like I wish I could have done more, but you just went with it, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You had the energy and you just went right with it, and I didn't need to do too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
you
that
gave me the info, and that's what I needed.
to me, just a
We were
nudge in
we
the right.
were coming back from Thanksgiving, and our daughter, one of our middle daughter, had gone with us. Meadow and I were sitting in the front seat. Flip was in the back, and she started
Listening to the podcast. Or
and that on that ride home from Southern California to Oregon, that's when she bought into it. And as soon as we got home, she said,
Amen.
"I'm going walking."
Fantastic, fantastic, and yeah, it takes some folks years to get to that point. Took me over a year, maybe year and a half before I said, forget all this other stuff. I'm going with this. And I was very fortunate to have discovered it. I put it down a few times. I knew about Dr. Sarno's healing back pain book and Claire Weeks' with panic and anxiety and all that. Like I knew it was out there, but it took me a while to get there. So I'm glad you got there faster, got through, and ready to hike again next summer. All right, if anybody wants to hike with you, then they're gonna have to do an interview with you, and you'll see if they have what it takes.
We love
Thanks,
you.
thanks again. Love you
Okay.
guys. I'll
Thanks.
talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.